Connor Fowler.
And I'm Matt Smith.
We are joined by none other than the fearsome Filipino, the Don of the double breast, the Mad King of Queens, the Scion of suiting, the boisterous blonde bombshell, the K-pop fan with the tattooed hand, the suave stand-up, the dashing director of art, the maestro of made to measure, gorgeous George himself. Here's Jason Sandagon, and welcome to Apocalypse Duds. Thank you for joining us. How are you on your half day from work?
Wow. I'm better now. That was crazy. Did you write all those down?
That's literally the reaction we get from everyone.
That was so many.
Yeah. Connor and I were really trying to workshop this for the past few days, and
that's good.
It just came together.
Yeah, it really did, dude. Because we started out with like 3. It was the kingpin of K-pop, which I think is a nice ... But it's funny. I mean, I'm amused. I like words a lot, and so
that was good. Those were really good. All of them were really good. Real solid.
Well, feel free to use them.
Yeah,
yours. They're yours now.
You have to send them to me because I already forgot half of them.
Oh, we sure.
Yes, I will share this. I will share this document with you when we get into it. When we get done with it.
Yeah.
So how's it going today, Jason?
It's good. You know, I was off like half the day today, which is good. So I spent like the day taking some photos for like the store I work for's website.
Nice. How's the weather?
Oh, I meant to say your photos are good. That's what I wanted
you.
to say to you. The photos that I have seen, I thought were very good. So that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that before the show started, but now I'm saying it during the show.
That's fine. Yeah. I love a Canon compliment.
Yeah.
Now you can't go back on it.
Right.
The weather here today was nice. It was like 50.
Oh.
And it was it was like slightly overcast.
Gotcha.
But it was like nice, just like sweatshirt and like some corduroy weather.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous because we've launched back into like early fall weather, so it was like 72 and kind of humid today down here.
Oh wow, that's
not the most fun. Not the most fun. So, Jason, where are you from, and where are you located now?
I am from a very small, legally a city in Massachusetts called Gardner.
Okay.
And now I live in Queens, New York City.
Is Gardner in the Boston Metro?
No. So it's like 30 minutes outside. It's part of it's like there's a city in like the center of Massachusetts called Worcester.
Yeah.
And it's more of like a suburb of that.
Gotcha.
But it's even that is pushing it in terms of like what a suburb is, because it's like it takes like 20 minutes to get to Worcester. But like I know people who like live in my hometown that work in Worcester, but not many people will work in like Boston.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, it's like one of those like it's pretty rural.
Right. And you're located in Queens now.
Yep. Now I live in Queens, the world's borough, the greatest.
What neighborhood in Queens, or part of Queens, I guess is.
I live in Sunnyside, so it's like when you're on the East River, there's like Long Island City, and then there's me. So it takes me like on the train like 10 minutes to get to like Midtown, which is worthless, but
yeah.
No, I love my neighborhood. It's great. I live in a very like mixed neighborhood. There's a lot of big like Japanese and like Asian population, as well as a big Spanish population, and also like white mixed in there.
Right.
What's really nice is that it doesn't, while I'm very close to Manhattan, it doesn't feel like I live in New York City.
Right.
It's very quiet out here. People are very nice. I know all the people that live in my building. And my building's only 7 stories, and it's one of the taller ones in like the neighborhood. So like it's always bright and sunny here.
Yeah. I lived in Bushwick when I lived in the city, and like
nice,
just kind of across the border from Ridgewood.
Yeah.
So like Queens has always seemed like sort of like melting pot is a very cliche term, but like
it's so true though.
Yeah, there's like a ton of different types of people and ethnicities and whatever that all just live on top of each other.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's a place across from my apartment. It's a Chinese restaurant, like a takeout place, but it's halal. And
Oh,
so I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's insane. But, obviously, clearly there's like a market, clearly there's people here that appreciate that.
totally. Yeah.
As someone who likes pork, not something
Hell yeah.
I can do. Big pork boy right here.
Hell
So
yeah. Man,
I haven't
truly a
eaten
man
over
after my
there,
own
but
heart.
yeah.
Yeah, I am not on the pork train any longer. However, I will say I have enjoyed mini pork in my life, or much pork in my life.
Mm. And it's a solid. It's just, I mean, obviously being like Asian American, it's a staple food. Even at like even at home, like at my parents' house, we eat a lot of pork. So it's not
Yeah,
even like just a me thing. My dad makes a lot of pork.
people get weirded out by ground pork. Those people are wrong. It's good.
Yeah.
That's a nice delivery method.
Someone once told me they're like, "Oh, pork is really bad for you because it's dirty," and I'm like, "I don't.
My
What does that mean?"
God.
They're like,
Literally,
Eating all animals is bad for you.
yeah.
they're like, "Oh, well, pigs are like a dirty animal. They'll just eat anything," and I'm like, "Yeah, and so will I." So I'm like,
exactly.
I mean, if we're being honest about the American agricultural system, literally any meat is going to be absolutely disgusting if you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all grown in feces.
And this is said as a vegan that also knows that people are going to eat meat. Yeah, not the greatest, not the greatest.
Yeah.
If you enjoy it, fuck it, whatever.
Damn right.
Well, Jason, we are piloting a new segment here on the show.
All right.
The Ensemble Investigation. If you could please, if you feel like it, if you're wearing no clothing, we don't have to do this. If you could describe to us what you wore today, what you wore to work, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, right now I'm just wearing like sweatpants, but I'll tell you what I wore to work.
Wait. Are they designer sweatpants or like?
No, they are from Aerie.
Okay,
Like,
all right.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
I don't buy designer sweatpants. That'd be insane.
Good fucking call. Good call. Sorry, didn't mean to interject.
So like today, I wore it to work. I just wore some vintage polo Andrew khakis. Like they were just like tan, like just actual khaki colored twill chinos. But they're the Andrew model from like the 80s and 90s that had like the double pleats.
Oh yes,
beautiful.
They may have been from the early 2000s. I don't know. I just know I like them. They feel nice. They're comfortable. I wore a rugby, a red and navy stripe rugby. I think it was from like J. Crew. And I threw on the Drake's gray hoodie.
All right, solid.
With
my
puka shell necklace.
Yeah,
sure.
Comfy, but still put together enough.
Yeah. And what's nice about I don't want to say too many nice things about Drake's. Don't want to give them the airtime, but that sweatshirt's really nice because it's a very it's got that like 50s athletic wear. It's got, that material is already really nice, like the cotton, like that old fashioned like Champion type.
Yeah, totally.
Beat, and it has like the cropped length, so it's not super long, and it has a really big pocket on the front, and it's like that detail.
Yeah,
and it's got like thick, like tall ribbing.
I would imagine that the chinos are pretty high waist too, so like
exactly. So it complements it really well.
Yeah. A follow-up question: what shoes did you wear today?
New Balance 574.
Okay,
that is the like a standard one. They're
the basic New Balance, like old school runner shape.
Yeah. I think it's 574 is what the name of it is.
Nice, solid.
So excellent. Thanks for sharing that with us. We'll get into it, I guess, now. Of course, you love clothing. You have a clothing brand. You are on the internet. You post pictures of your outfits. Where did your love of clothing come from?
That's a great question, and I was thinking about this today because I was like, I was like, this is a good question that they're probably gonna ask me.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't really pin it down. I've always been into clothing, in some way, shape, or form, and I've always been into like tailored clothing. Growing up, I couldn't really afford it, um, but I've always been really into tailored clothing, and then just into clothing in general. I used to always go to like the mall and like buy clothes. When I was in college, I was constantly buying clothes. Um, but like I can't. There wasn't a single moment that like a light bulb went off, and I was like, I love clothes. It was I was always constantly trying to get my parents to buy me more clothes, always trying to buy myself more clothes. Um, so it's just like from like a youth on, I just loved him. I just wish I had a better answer. I just can't pin it down.
No, no, I think that's a very like natural way to be.
No one in
Like
my family shares an appreciation for clothes, so like I'm a one-off.
okay, okay. So like what did your parents like wear? Was it just kind of basic shit or
Well, my mom's a nurse, so she was like, if she wasn't in scrubs, she was basically in like jeans and some sort of t-shirt. Um, something that was like, it's like on the fancier side. Like, are you guys familiar with the store Kohl's?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
used to work at Kohl's.
Oh,
I
hey,
Yeah.
used
shout
to
out.
work at Kohl's. Yes, I'm extremely familiar with
My
Kohl's.
mom is a big fan of Kohl's. She got a lot
Okay.
of Co-
Yeah.
a lot of Kohl's cash.
Right, right.
Hell
So like
yeah.
my mom, I think everything my mom owns is basically from Kohl's, whether it
And I
be
mean
like
Kohl's is kind of like the higher end of the TJ Maxx Marshalls thing.
100%, and
So,
that's
you
what I was
know,
trying to like get at. Where I was like, it's like never, it's not like she's not wearing like some dingy T-shirt, like
right,
and like
right.
it's from like the So label, you know, with like some like Levi jeans that she got at an outlet type of thing.
Okay, all right.
And
And
then
what
my
about you?
dad,
Yeah.
my dad is like a like sort of this blue collar guy, so he's always in like a t-shirt and jeans as well.
Okay.
um yeah, and then when my dad's like idea of like dressing up, he'll throw on like a collared shirt, and that's about it, with the
Right.
jeans,
Yeah.
which is fine, nothing wrong with that. I do it all the time.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. I mean, we all have these like parts of parts of what we think are cool or what we're into that like the parents or the adults around you don't really like have any not respect, but like they just don't give a shit. So
That's 100% what it is. Like my parents, obviously, they're very proud of like the label I've created. They just don't get it,
yeah,
and
totally,
that's
totally.
fine. But
Yeah,
they're still like supportive. They're not like, oh, I can't believe you do this.
right.
They're like, good for you. They're like, if people like what you make, that's great, you know. But like, it's not something that like they're gonna get anything out of. Like, I'm not, they're not gonna ask me to make them a suit or anything like that,
Right, right.
which
Which
is
is fine.
fine.
Yeah, totally. The support means the world.
Right.
Yeah. So how'd you get into the clothing industry from kind of like being an outlier and enjoying something that you may not have
Yeah.
been around a month?
So I fell into it in like the most, I guess, like stereotypical way. So I went to school for film and TV production. I moved to New York City, and then I just got a job at Bloomingdale's.
Okay.
Um,
The
and
one on like 59?
yeah, the flagship Bloomingdale's.
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
So it was my first job in New York City, and frankly, it was one of my first jobs ever because I before that I worked at a concession stand at a flea market. So I
Oh
wasn't,
wow.
I didn't have a big job repertoire. Um, but yeah, so I started working at Bloomingdale's, and I was stationed on like the men's accessories. So it's on the Third Avenue side, but the whole block on Third Avenue,
Right.
where it was like Burberry, like all the luxury like leases, and then like Thomas Payne, Turnbull and Asser were up there as well. And I got put into, I was floating around, but I was oftentimes like put into cover for like Turnbull and Asser or like Thomas Pink. And so through that, I really got to know the two people that ran those two separate shops. And eventually, um, I got hired at Thomas Pink at their like store in Columbus Circle.
Okay.
Through that like connection. So like I started at Bloomingdale's when I started talking to these people. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, all this stuff is really cool. And I had like, you got like a discount, so it's like I was able to like dabble a little more in like, beginner luxury clothing like that. Because Thomas Pink shirts at that time, this is 2016.
Okay.
At that point they were like, $195, which is an expensive shirt, especially for me just coming out of college. And being, coming out of college, and I was 20. So the 195 was a lot of money. But luckily I got like that discount, and then occasionally Bloomingdale's would do this thing for the employees where you'd get like a weekend where we'd get a super discount for like uniform worthy things. Because when I was working at Bloomingdale's, there was a uniform. You could only wear a black suit. You had to be wearing a shirt and a tie, and everything. So like there were certain times, a few times a year, they would do like uniform discounts where you could go around the store and get whatever you want at a really steep discount, as long as it qualified for a uniform. Now they don't do that because they don't really have a uniform anymore.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But then I started working at Thomas Pink, and that let me dive further into it, and obviously at that point, I'm surrounded by, English tailoring, English shirting, and ties and all that. And I got all that stuff. They give you, Thomas Pink gave you like a bundle for like free every season of like stuff. And so it became that. And I started like, as I started researching more, that whole love for clothing kind of came back into my forefront, and I was sort of slowly starting to realize I think I'd prefer to be in clothing than I would prefer to be in like film and TV, because I wasn't really doing anything in film and TV. I spent all my time working in like clothing, and then research, like on my free time I was like researching and trying to learn. And of course when I first started getting into it, I was like one of those people reading what's that like Gentleman's Gazette.
Right.
I was
yeah.
I was
Those
like one of those
early blogs.
Yeah, and I was like one of those like vintage only kinds of people.
Okay.
But it wasn't because I don't really like vintage as much as I like new. But it was like I bought a lot of vintage because I could only afford to buy vintage.
Right.
Yeah, that's still where I am in my life.
And not there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong.
No, I don't take it as a slight. It just is what it is. Like I have my priorities. I have to buy drugs.
Right. With inflation, cocaine is through the roof.
Yeah, and if you're paying retail, you're not going to be able to afford it.
Right, you're gonna wholesale.
You're right.
Sadly, or surprisingly, I guess, this is the first time cocaine has been mentioned on this show. So thank you, Connor.
Yeah. Hopefully my mom finally listens to the show and this is the one that she hears.
This is the one. Yeah, and then like from Thomas Pink, I stumbled into my job now where I work for the clothing store Frank Stella, here in New York City, and I literally stumbled into that job there. We had a store at and then inside like the New York Athletic Club on 57th or 58th and 7th. And I happened to be on my lunch break, and I just walked in because I'm like, oh, what is this store? I walk by it every day, and I happened to be walking in, and the owner happened to be like working on the floor, and I was just chatting, and we were chatting, and I was like, well, that store's actually pretty nice. They have really nice things that I liked. And then I left, and then like 6 months later, he calls me up. And he's like, hey, you came into the store, a few months ago, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in like a job. And I was like, yeah, Thomas Pink was paying me nothing, and he was going to pay me more. And, I was like, yeah, sure. And then Indies, I've worked there now for like 4.5 years. With a small sabbatical in the middle where I left to go work for Drake's. But that's
Gotcha.
we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But so like in like the first like three up until like 2021, like November of 2021, I skyrocketed to like the top of like, everything. So like now like the arrangement of like the company is, the owner, and then there's like me, and then there's like the store manager and everybody else. So like now I'm doing like buying, and I'm doing like the bookkeeping. I'm doing office work. I'm spending more time in the office than I was on the floor.
Right.
And it was just like he just put so much like faith in me, and just like bombarded me with like fashion business knowledge. It was insane, and like obviously so grateful for it that I still work there.
Totally.
And I still take that on 100%. I'm still doing like now since since coming back from Drake's, I am spending most of the time I spend is in the office that we have on 72nd Street, photographing the stuff for the website. I manage the entirety of the website. So like I am the one adding products, and I'm adding, inventory, and doing like the website merchandising, and then I go to buying appointments with the owner.
Right.
And we buy things, and like, we buy things, and sometimes it's like, I'm buying something while he's doing something else, so
Right.
There's like that whole, there's a lot of trust obviously between the two of us, where he's like, I can buy something, on my own. And he trusts that, he trusts me enough to know that it's not going to like bankrupt him for the most part. I've made some bad decisions.
As you do as a buyer. That's
right.
Just part of the deal.
And I look at them as they're not bad decisions, because they were just too much of something that I would want to wear and not enough of something the customer would want to wear.
For sure.
So like the things I bought are gorgeous, and I have a lot of them.
Right.
But
it just doesn't work for
it didn't really sell as much in the store. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
gotta take risks.
Yeah. But like in November of 2021, I ended up like, I left and I went to go work for Drake's to be their like US stock manager, and it was a whole thing. There's a big falling out between me and one of the other coworkers, and it just happened that Brandon from Brandon Mahler happened to post that they were looking for someone, so I like DM'd him, because I already knew Brandon, so I DM'd, I said, hey, I'd love to like be considered. And then he calls me like 10 minutes later and basically, gave me the lowdown of it all. I said, great. Yeah. I said, let me know if you need anything else from me. And then, he called me back like the next day or whatever. It was like, hey, they want to give you the job. And I was like, I'll take it. Ultimately, there's like with Drake's, there's like part of me that regrets doing it, but then some of it else I don't,
Yeah, totally.
But ultimately, I came back to Frank Stella at the end of it, right as we were, right as like the new store opened at Drake. So I was working the pop up, and at the same time, I was, we were building out the new store.
Right.
And as the stock manager, I was like laying the plans for the stock room, and there was just a lot of going back and forth in like a bad way. That eventually, the day before we opened officially, I put in my notice and I was like, I'm done, so I was there for the first 2 weeks of the store opening. And then I wasn't even there for like the official, so like the day before we like opened for the public, we didn't do anything, like there was no party or anything. They didn't do a thing till like a month later. But like, so like the day after, the day before we opened for the public, I put in my notice, right?
Right.
So the next day, people are coming in and they're like, oh, wow, nice to see the place. And for the next 2 weeks, people are like, you know, I'm talking to people and like, wow, it looks so good, you know, see you next time, all this. And I'm like, you know, I didn't tell anybody, you know, so no one knew I was leaving except for like the staff,
Yeah.
you know, because I wasn't going to be that person who like every time someone comes in and says, oh, how's it working here? I'm not going to, oh, it's terrible. I put in my notice actually, you know.
Sometimes you just got to do what you have to do for yourself, though.
Yeah, so for like the last, you know, 2 weeks, I was like, just, oh yeah, you know, great, stop on by. And I was like telling people about it, still like promoting, you know, like saying, hey, yo, come stop by. But then like on the last day, it was like this big. On my last day, we did a little get together, and I was like, thank you guys, you know. I even left early on my last day because I'm like, what are you gonna do? Stop me?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was, and then I ended up going back to Frank Stella to do what I'm doing now, which is, you know, I have even more power.
Totally. It all comes full circle.
Yeah, and so I mean, it was such like a short stint at Drake's, right? It was only like 8 months. I only lasted 8 months at Drake's. But it was like that whole situation, right? That whole 8 months was so stressful, and it was a lot for a lot of people, and I mean it was obviously a lot, you know, because Brandon and I left at the same time. You know, I mean, I don't want to speak for him at all, but you know, it shows, you know, for him, Brandon worked there for 4 years, 4.5 years, you know, and then, you know, at the same day that I quit, he had quit like 10 minutes before me. So it was like, you know, it shows that like, you know, what was really going on. And then, you know, there's just a lot of issues with, you know, different personalities and things like that. But I'm back now at Frank Stella where I'm doing all this, and then obviously I have my own brand, which is where we are now.
Well, speaking of the brand, we were gonna ask Mad King George, where does the name come from?
So it comes from like an offhand like joke. I was in a car. I was with the owner of Frank Stella. We were driving out to East Hampton because we were doing a pop up, and I had told him I wanted to make my own label, and he was told me he's like, you should, you know, and I was like, yeah, I should. And I like it just became, we were like going back and forth. I was like, oh, I don't know what to call it though, you know, I don't want it to be my name. That's cliche, and I don't think my name really lends itself to a sort of like really anything. I just don't like the way it sounded. Like when we call it like, oh, Jason Sandagon, New York.
Mad
Like that
King
sounds
Jason?
dumb.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't remember what we were talking about something, and then I had said, oh, well, I might as well just call my brand like Mad King George then. You know, and then he was like, that's not a bad name. And I'm like, you're right, that's not a bad name. And that's really, and like I like 2 seconds later, I was like on Instagram, and I like was like, is this an available thing? And I like Googled just to make sure that no one else did it. And I was like, great, that's a name, perfect, done.
Settled.
Yeah.
Should I have thought about it a little more? Maybe, but I don't know. People seem to like the name.
Oh,
I
dude,
like
that's a good origin story. Like,
yeah, it's like
it's captivating,
and it you know, it also like speaks to like the brand itself, where we're still, you know, everything is sort of, you know, freehand.
right?
You know, so it's like, because I never went to school for any of this, you know, so much of this is like new to me in a.
Yeah, but you've got the experience,
Right?
To, like,
That's for sure.
To this.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, it's just some offhand joke.
Yeah, dude.
Right.
Sometimes that's the necessary thing.
Right. So I was going to ask if there is a court for Mad King George, or if it is just you.
There's kind of like a court. So like Mad King George is like the bulk of it is like idea wise and like design wise is like my creation. I created the pattern. I created, you know, the, you know, bits and pieces of like the concept. But like that's not the full story. There's another half like business side of it.
Right.
That you know, my beautiful and wonderful partner Tamara, who has a fashion business degree, helps me with.
Shout out Tamara.
Yeah, shout out to Mara. It's like I use like the business stuff that like Frank Stella has taught me, plus like her knowledge, and she helped me like create like the prices and how to like she's helped me a lot with even talking to like the customers and clients, because I'm not like the greatest at like talking to people, especially new people. And so she was like coached me on how to do that. I'm sorry, my cat has just jumped up onto my table.
Hello, cat.
And so she helps me a lot with like the business half of all of this.
Okay.
And then like obviously she helped me a lot with making like the women's pattern, because it was made essentially for her.
Right, of course.
But yeah, so it's like it's like a it's the two of us. She will never like say she's a part of it though, which is dumb. She's like, oh, it's always just Jason's thing, but I'm like, no, you help me a lot more than you think you do.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. And how has reception been since you launched?
It's mixed for sure.
Okay.
But I think it's well received by the people that like I want it to be well received by.
Dope.
You know, the people who hate it are obviously like people on like our Navy Blazer, or like these very much like purists, right?
What was that guy's
Right.
name? Berkeley Breeze that Ethan
Yeah,
was always
exactly.
arguing with.
He would hate it.
Clownish shit. Yeah,
and
dude,
like the
fuck those
Ivy
kind of
style people
anyway.
hate it,
Yeah.
But yeah, like the people who like want like who see the label for what it is, which is like it is a bit more of a fashion label than it is like your typical Savile Row house, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
but you're
so
not claiming to be that.
Exactly. I'm not claiming to be Savile Row or anything,
Right.
but I think there's this connotation, of course, if you're doing custom tailoring, you must be that, right? You must be trying to be that. I'm like, it's the only reason it's custom is because there's no like overhead and there's no risk.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives people the opportunity to express themselves a lot better than with ready to wear. And that's like that's what I want. Like you couldn't get any things I wanted to wear, I couldn't get ready to wear, and so I was like, I made it my own label, and yeah, so it's like people who expect it to be, who are very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like stingent, is that a word? No, that's not a word. I don't know. They were very like much like, oh, things are supposed to be this way forever.
Right.
Pedantic,
they
don't like it.
They're traditionalists.
Yeah.
They are old-fashioned. Yeah.
Right, and so they don't like it as much as like other people. Like I remember someone posted like the lookbook that we did onto like our Navy Blazer and onto male fashion advice. And you have like, some of them are like, oh, I see what they're trying to do. And or like people be like, oh, well, the photography style of it all, we did this really bright, flash, and like, everything was like sort of slick and a little sleazy, and we, in the elevator and all that. And it's like, well, they were like, well, haven't we passed this? Isn't this, why does everything have to be trying to be like sleazy? Like it looks so sleazy, and I'm like, because that's what I was trying to do. I'm like,
right.
And they're like, oh, well, it looks like nothing looks like it fits. Everyone's crammed into it. I said, well, also keep in mind, people get the connotation of like a lookbook. They get it mixed up. Like the lookbook is styling.
Yeah,
it's not about. It's not so much about fit.
Yeah, it's about how someone is going to look in this every day. It's about getting it in front of people and making an expression.
Exactly. It's like we're trying to express, the direction of the label and everything, and we're also like in an elevator, we're posing, it's 2:00 in the morning. It's not perfect, but it wasn't, none of the stuff was built, the lookbook concept wasn't built to look perfect. It was built to look like you were in an elevator, you know?
Right.
And yeah, people couldn't really wrap their heads around that. At least the people on those Reddit pages.
Yeah.
And then, like, of course, like male fashion advice thought that it was like too styled. You know?
Right. Right.
Or I thought
Meanwhile,
it was,
we
like-
have Paul Stewart and Phineas Cole doing their thing. So
Right, and it's
Like-
like I think a lot of like, especially with the traditionalists, like these like the Ivy style type people, you know, they see like a lot of the '70s inspiration in my stuff, and they go, oh well, you know, that's I'm about timeless beauty and elegance, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, well,
Those people are
then
not
don't
going to be
buy my
happy with
stuff.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
those people
no.
don't like anything.
They don't like
want
clothes.
anything.
They don't
Yeah.
like clothes. They like their thing
And it's
that
like I
they've
also tell
worn for the
people,
past 50 years, and that's it.
right,
Which
and
is
it's like,
weirdly like white supremacist. Like
Yeah.
that whole field is
Yeah.
like, we wish that it was only white people that were able to wear a jacket like this.
Right.
right, and it's like, yeah, it's like, oh well, people just dressed better in the '40s or in the '50s or in the '60s. It's like, okay, sure, if that's what you want to believe, that's fine.
Right. Right.
All right, but you know, I live in 2022, and that's like a big reason why I don't like really wear vintage, or like I don't really like a lot of vintage, because I'm like, I live in 2022. Some of this stuff from like I'm never gonna wear like a belt back jacket.
Right.
And I know vintage people love like those Palm Beach belt backs and all that. And I'm like,
Totally.
but I'm like, you're not gonna catch me in that, because I'm like, that'd be a ridiculous thing for me to wear. You know, and I don't, like I just don't harbor that same affinity that some people have, like for the past. You can take inspiration from it, like I do. Like obviously, you know, my stuff is heavily inspired by, you know, the clothing of the 1970s, which most people would consider the worst time in clothing.
Depending on what we're talking about, yeah, like there's so much good shit from that time period.
Yeah, it's
That,
just like I like the really heavily styled things, you know.
Yeah,
like we have our big bellied lapels, you know.
I could see fucking Rod Stewart when he was in the Faces, or like Paul Weller of the Jam, wearing your shit.
Right, and that was the point. It was like, you know, I am, you know, a huge like Tommy Nutter, you know, if you're familiar.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Is like my, you know, tailoring role model, him and Edward Sexton. And so, you know, and they were making things for, you know, musicians and like, you know, celebrities and like cool people. And those cool people let them make cool things for them. You know, and that's what I want to be. You know, that's what we want to be. We want to be like cool people making cool things, and like, you know, and I always tell people too, you know, you can get like a navy suit from me, but why would you?
Right.
You know, if
Well,
you really want me to make you a navy suit, I'll do it, you know. But it's like, why? Why do you want me to make your navy suit for, you know, let me make your like dinner jacket.
Right. Something you can go a little bit farther out on.
Right, you know. And yeah, so it's like it gets mixed up in a lot of this stuff, a lot of this traditionalist stuff. Right. Even though like it's definitely, especially now, it's definitely more of like a fashion label than it is like, you know, a tailoring house.
Yeah. We noticed that kind of like one of the things you push is clothing for everyone. You know, women, non-binary, whatever gender. Was that kind of like when you were forming this idea? Was that a big part of it? Like it seems like a very much a pillar of your brand.
Yeah, for sure. It was always, you know, I grew up doing theater, so I grew up with a lot of like LGBT people, and and so it's like I grew up with all these people, and so much of like the clothing, so much of like tailoring is like men's tailoring, and like a lot of women's tailoring just like looks cool, but from a quality level isn't good, you know.
Right.
And it was like, you know, I have the ability to do both, you know, so why not? And it's like, you know, why not, you know, advertise the fact that, you know, I'll make you feel good in your own, you know, in your own clothing.
Right.
You know, so we look at it like, Obviously there's like still like two base patterns. Like we have our men's pattern, we have our women's pattern, but like those aren't mutually exclusive. If like Tamara wants something done in like from the men's pattern, we'll do it. And that's sort of you know how we go about it. And there's we've been working on a new pattern for what I'm calling the pajama suit, which
Oh,
is just it's completely unlined. There's no padding, no canvassing, and then it's basically just like a very like drapey, it's just cloth essentially. So there's no like real darting in it,
right.
and then like the pants on it are just like a high rise. They're cut longer, so like they have a little bit of a break to them, and they're wide. So it's like this really like leisure suit, if you will. And so it's like I want to, yeah, like I said, I want to create something, and for that is for everybody in like the full sense of the word.
Yeah, that's a solid mission statement. Gotta hand
Yeah.
it to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Not something you see very much from like any kind of tailored clothing brand or whatever. So
Yeah. It's usually always like, oh, men's and then women's are like an afterthought.
right, yeah, or
But like they're
or vice versa, where like J Crew is concerned.
right,
It's like they only give a shit about the women's because that makes the money. The men's
right, and
stuff
it's
is just
like
kind of like thrown away.
yeah, and it's like yeah, so it's like both of those things are important.
Totally, totally.
They both hold equal, and I make, it's funny. Like obviously I'm like at heart it's like a menswear, like brand, but I make more stuff for women than I do men.
Does not surprise me in the
You
least.
know,
Yeah.
which is fine. I like making things for women.
Oh, totally, totally. Whatever works because
Yeah.
you know the people that get it, and depending on, or not really depending on what or whatever they are. Like if they get
Right.
it, they're
If they get it, they get it, and if they don't, it's like I'm not going to spend the time or the energy trying to convince people to like
totally
buy from me. In any way of like, you know, you come in for like a fitting or like for to look at things. It's like this is what it is, and that's it. There is no like, you know, you can't come in here and create whatever you want. A lot of it is like it's what I do. It's our pattern, our everything, and then you can pick the fabric, the buttons, and some minor changes, but like the design of it is my design. If you want to fully if you want to make something like you know design something yourself, then there's plenty of other places to do that. If you want
Sure.
if you want to change the lapel widths and whatnot, it's like for me, it's like the lapel width is what the lapels and like the way the jacket especially is cut and looks is what makes it a Mad King George piece. It's that mashup. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. My cat just knocked into the microphone. But yeah, like the Mad King George is such a mash of these different elements. It's slowly the more you take away from that, then for me the less it feels like something I did. And it's like at the end of the day, I want people to be able to walk around in my stuff, people to know it's mine from the right away. And I want to be proud of it.
totally. How did you land on the house style that you use?
The house style is basically like a Frankenstein of so many other things that I liked. Like I said, I was a big fan of like Tommy Nutter and Edward Sexton, but also was a big fan of the sort of soft tailoring from out of like Naples, and so I was like, oh, I need like my own brand would be, you know, a mix of those two things, which is how you get to, our big bellied lapels with our like, strong chests. But
Right.
then you look at the shoulders and you have these, there's no padding in our shoulder at all, as well as like with your, the pleated shoulder as well, and you have the open quarters in the front. And it's like those things all mix really well together.
Certainly.
And no one was really doing that. It was either people were either of one camp or the other. They were either English or they were like Neapolitano. There's no middle ground. And not that I'm saying I'm the middle ground either, because obviously I'm on an extremer side of a spectrum when it comes to like tailoring to. But it was like, for me, I liked the softness of of like that Neapolitano, but I liked the boldness that Nutter and Sexton would do.
Totally.
I would think a lot of it's like the pattern was really, a big chunk of it was like, what if you ripped the shoulder pads out of out of like Sexton, or like out of like these vintage Nutter things? We just ripped them out.
Right.
And I'm like, that's why it's like our shoulders a little overlined, and it's a little, it's like I said, there's no padding whatsoever in it. The bit, if it wasn't for the canvas in these jackets, they would be, nothing. They would just be like t-shirts.
Right. Yeah, especially since you're doing made to measure, like that's super important.
Right.
And you can get it right, whereas doing like a ready to wear line, there would be people that the shoulder just didn't work for because they're sloped or whatever.
So, right, and I can adjust for that.
Yeah,
and then
totally.
And then you have like in the front we have a full chest piece, so it's fully canvassed.
Right, so it gives it a little bit of structure.
Right, so you have that little bit of structure plus I think that's going to mold to you. And then everywhere else where there's no padding, though that wool or that cotton is going to mold to you as well. So you just have, after a few wears, you have like a perfectly like fitted and perfectly looking suit.
Hell yeah.
But that still looks relaxed and cool.
Yeah, it's not stuffy.
Right, and cool is like, I say that a lot. Like, I just want, like, I want things to look cool, and it's obviously it's open to interpretation, which is perfect because I change my mind all the time. But like at the end of the day, it's like it just has to, everything comes together to make a cool suit, something that's just, it's light, it's airy, it's able to be dressed up or down, it's just this sort of just perfect garment.
Yeah.
So, Jason, I was going to ask about the advertising and branding, which I think is a pretty strong part of the brand. What the process was like for that, and I don't know how you arrived at what you did. See, we know the name and that, but I guess like the lookbook.
Yeah, so like the branding of it all started out much different. I think, I'm not sure if it's still on the Instagram page, if you were to scroll all the way down to the bottom, but I think I archived a lot of it as we were shifting into this different sort of ethos. A lot of it at first was just like, a few pictures, and I made this like, everything was supposed to look like this like mood board. So like every photo was like, looked like it was taped onto the background, things like that. And I still do some of that stuff because like I like the idea of like this sort of, things are coming together as it all, as the brand essentially still is a work in progress. But when it came down to a lot of like the branding and like, the marketing part of it, it was just like, what did I want to see? What did I think the best light for the stuff, was? And at first, at the very beginning, was like, oh, well, it needs to be like, typical, it should be more mensweary. And then it took the turn of like the whole punk thing, and like the initial punk rock phase of it, where it was like, oh, everything was like black and white or like gritty, everything was rough around the edges, the pictures were like thrown together. And then and that just changed as like I sort of changed over the last, like, I've been doing this for like 2 years now. And so like over the course of those 2 years, the punk rock thing for me was like, okay, it's not really where I think the brand is headed, nor is it something I felt like I could really grow within. Not that I didn't still believe in that ethos, but it just became, I felt like I was a different person, now than I was when I started that, era. And I was like, okay, so we need to like shift, because I wasn't really listening to a lot of like punk music anymore. I had started to listen to like, like happier music, right? Um, and so that shifted like the ethos of the brand, because it was like the brand is so heavily attached to me,
Right.
in that way. It's like, I want the brand to just be, an extended arm of who I am. Because it's like at a certain point, it's like if I kept doing the punk rock thing, then I'm gonna grow to hate the thing that I created.
Right.
Or I'm gonna
Right.
grow in a way that's like I'm just detached from it, where it's like I'm forcing myself to stay in this little box. And it made sense at first because, I was like, when I first started, I was mad. I was like angry that there was nothing cool about like tailoring anymore, or like at all. It was like no matter, it was like everyone was like, oh, well, look at Spear McKay, or oh, look at like Anglo Italian, and to me they were all just the same.
Yeah.
None of it
Yeah.
looked different. It was all just everything just cost different amounts.
And like tailored clothing is not something you really can reinvent with. So like,
Right.
the fact that you kind of stepped out into your own thing that you found inspiration from, like, that's important. That's huge.
Yeah, it was like, oh well, it was like I was in that moment. It was like I was more angry. It's like it was 2020. It was the tail end of 2020, and then into 2020, I was like, I was like fed up with a lot of things, and I was listening to a lot of like going back and listening to like a lot of like, hardcore and things like that, and
Yeah, totally.
and so it just felt at that moment it felt right. I'm like, oh, because I'm like, I'm breaking up this, the man, I'm fighting, the tailoring man
Right.
to make something cooler and better, and I'm trying to, fuck shit up.
Fuck yeah.
And then like a big part of it, like toward the like within this year, I was like, okay, but like where do I what does that do? It didn't really make the brand feel like it was like a nice welcoming environment.
Right.
And I was like, and I was like, well, I romanticize so much of what I do, and I'm like, well, that should be the pinnacle of all this. And that's where I was like, yeah, I romanticize this whole thing, and it's much more of a happy and like welcoming place.
Right.
And it was like, at that time I had like fallen in love. I had fallen even more in love with like K-pop, and it was just like making me, a happier person. I was going outside, I was, meeting friends and things like that, and I'm like, this is what this is. This is like, you're going out. I was like, my garments, like, you're going out in them.
Right.
And where are you going? You're going out to do, like things that I do, and I go to do karaoke. I go to like, dinner. I still refuse to go to like, menswear dinner spots. But like, I still wear my stuff to like, go to karaoke, or like when I go to like K barbecue. And I fell in love with this, this more of this like community of, being excited over about like life and about music, and I have such a vast, library of music that I listen to. There's the Mad King George playlist that like if, a few people are subscribed to, right, on Apple Music, and it's like those people have gotten I'm sure have, gotten whiplash, because initially that playlist was all like old punk and pop punk, and then now it's dominated by like upbeat, music, or like, Dolly Parton. So it's been this big switch, and then so I remade the logo to be this like broken heart, because what's more romantic than heartbreak?
Totally.
And yeah, so it's like this switch, and that's what we're doing now, and that's why I was like, when we did like the lookbook, I was like, oh, how cool would it be to like shoot it like in the elevator? It's like, it was like, oh, we're going somewhere, you know, and this is just a piece of it. You know, there's more to this like little lookbook that we're working on, but it's like we're trying to create this sort of this world, right? There's a short film that we're shooting in like 2 weeks, that centers around this idea of romance and tailoring, and how, you know, it all plays together, and it's much more obviously upbeat, and like things are, you know, happier, because I as a person am happier, you know, and I didn't want to continue having like an angry brand, you know.
Totally, totally. Times change, and the fact that you can do your own thing and like figure out, you know, how it affects, or how it's affected by you and your mood, like that's a great thing. That's a free kind of feeling to it.
Right, and like recently I didn't redo entirely, but like, you know, I changed up the website, and, you know, sort of got rid of um a lot of the elements that were feeding into that whole, like, you know, we're rebels and we're wearing suits and, you know, fuck you. Yeah, I got rid of a lot of that stuff from it, because I'm like, yeah, again, it was a piece of our brand, and
Right.
it's still like at the core of it. It's still like we're still, you know, it's still rebellious to wear, you know,
Totally.
especially the suits
They're
that
not
I make,
mutually
you know,
exclusive.
right. But I'm like, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be like rebellious in like an angry way.
Totally.
We can be very happily, you know, rebelling, because like it's like clothing makes, you know, me happy, right? I love clothing. So like, why am I approaching it with this attitude of like hating everybody else's clothing?
Right.
You know, like that's not very Cash Money of me.
Excellent. We got the Cash Money reference.
Yeah.
So we will try to wrap up with the way we have been wrapping up. Well, this is sort of a custom question.
Yeah.
What is your favorite piece you have made with Mad King George?
So favorite piece,
If you can
is
answer that question.
no, I can, yeah. It's like it's the like I call it the strawberry milkshake tweed dinner jacket. So it's like it's this pink and black like check like window pane. Like, and then it's like a herringbone tweed. So it's super cool, and I made it into like a dinner jacket. I think it's on my Instagram page.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I believe I've seen it.
Yeah, you know, link in the description below. And that is like the cool, to this day it's still like the coolest thing I've ever made. You know, especially with like we did like, you know, obviously all, you know, fabric covered buttons. We did like the fabric lapel as well, so it's not like the satin lapel or anything. You know, and it was like, I remember seeing the fabric. I never saw the fabric in person. The people, the Huddersfield, who made the fabric, they had sent me an email, you know, about this fabric that they had on sale because no one really bought it. And, you know, I was like, oh yeah, let me buy like 5 meters of it. I'll make something cool out of it, you know? And then, yeah, I made that, and I was like, oh my God, it came in. And I was like, I couldn't be more ecstatic about it. You know, the really big, like cocktail turn back cuffs on it. And it's overall it is still the coolest thing I've ever made.
Yeah, it's great. We will definitely post a picture
even wear it. I wore it once outside to Connor
like
Rickman's his film premiere when he premiered it here in New York. I wore it to that. But that being said, I made it in like 2020, so like in 2021. So there was nowhere to wear it to.
Right.
Now I have places to wear it to that I just haven't had a chance to wear.
Yeah. I hope that's going to be your New Year's Eve jacket.
Oh, there we go.
Dude, I mean, New Year's Eve...
I don't even think I'm doing anything for New Year's Eve, but maybe I'll find something.
You should find something, and solely to wear that jacket.
I'll go to the Olive Garden in Times Square.
Perfect.
Oh, man.
Yeah, maybe I'll find something to do just so I can wear that.
Yeah. Solid.
So I would ask then, what is your favorite thing in your wardrobe? Is it the same thing?
No, it's not the same thing. My favorite piece of my personal wardrobe is not even something that's like menswear related or anything. It is this. It's this sweatshirt I'm wearing right now. It's a sweatshirt, and it is for the Little Manila Line Dancing Club.
Oh, I saw that.
And so that is I wear the sweatshirt all the time. I have a T-shirt of the same thing, and it's fun. It's like Tamara actually bought this sweatshirt, and I bought the T-shirt, and now I'm like, no, I'm gonna take the sweatshirt too.
Yeah.
But it's my favorite piece. It lets me feel, connected to like the community, and like so this is like Little Manila is a neighborhood now, and as an official neighborhood in Queens.
Oh.
As of a few months ago. As of June, sorry. Yeah, what am I saying?
Gotcha.
As of June. So June 12th, my birthday, as well as is also the Filipino Independence Day. And so this year they unveiled a new a little sign, like a street sign from the city that says Little Manila now. It's a few blocks in Woodside. So now it's an official neighborhood. And so I bought this little sweatshirt as a little at the Independence Day celebration they did in Brooklyn. So it's like I was like, oh my god, yeah, I want that. It's nice. I'm not. Line dancing is a big thing in like Filipino culture. I'm not a line dancer. But I was like, oh, it's nice to like, it makes me feel like I'm more connected to them.
Totally.
But that's my favorite piece of my personal wardrobe. That, or maybe like a pair of like corduroy pants from like Ralph Lauren.
The hoodie,
like the Andrew. But the hoodie, like it's at least it has like good meaning to it as well.
Yeah,
exactly. It holds personal weight.
That's one of the better like, what is my favorite thing answers that I can think of.
It's like I'm sure Ethan, will say his favorite thing is a vintage blazer. But not me.
Right.
I'm into it. Well, Jason, dude, it's been rad to talk to you, and
yeah, you guys too. This was cool.
Fun and informative. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
Hell yeah. Well, we always like to give our guests a little spot to shout out whatever they want to shout out. So feel free.
Oh, I mean, shout out the beautiful Tamara Rotella. Shout out madkinggeorge.com. I don't know. I don't have anything I'm not
that's good. That's it. Your brand.
Yeah. Mad King George.
Shout out
to also Instagram. What is the Instagram?
Oh yeah, the Instagram. You can follow me personally, Jason Sandagon TV on Instagram. But the brand Instagram is Mad King George Tailors, or at Mad King George Tailors, because every other iteration of Mad King George was taken by some weird person,
of course,
or a history buff.
And if you're into mod culture and very soft English Savile Row shit, get in touch with my man Jason here.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I am Matt Smith at Rebels Rogues on Instagram.
And I'm Connor Fowler at Connor Fowler.
And I still don't think we've had any emails, but if you want the email of the show, apocalypseduds@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Somebody's got to email us on that fucking
Someone,
account.
come on.
Send us
some hate.
whatever.
Send us spam. We don't care. We've just got no emails.
Right.
So, anything.
Yeah. Jason, thank you again, man.
Thank you guys.
Thanks so much.